The Burros of Berea is a conversational podcast. We study the Bible and we talk about it. Not all of us are of the same faith, and one of us doesn't actually have a faith.
And that's wonderful. We all love one another, and we're going to continue to talk about these things.
The things we believe in and the things we believe about what we read in the Bible. Not all of these are necessarily true. Some of it is opinion and speculation. Thank you for
listening and speculating with us.
There you go. That was good. Yes.
You are listening to the Burros of Berea.
Well, welcome back to the Burros of Berea. I am Rick Welch, and across from me behind the glass is Rocket Man Andy Bishop.
Hello.
Yep. The last time that I heard your rocket sound was actually pretty good, but Ralph did a pretty good rocket sound too. So I was like,
yeah, he did it all rumbly, as I recall.
Yeah. Well, and then today, this is a special episode. We, much like a holiday edition episode, I have been wanting Uncle AJ to come on this show. We've been talking. He's been listening to the podcast. He's been, sounds like he's been pretty interested. So I've got to my right, Uncle AJ.
Hello.
And then to my left, my Aunt Joan. She is also here.
Hello.
So, yeah, we had, Andy, if you remember, we were talking, we started getting into race because our shows, we were talking about, like, why in the world would I be talking about, like, the KKK and the resurrection together? It's kind of odd. But I just wanted to show the point of how in Christianity, the resurrection is what sets Christians apart from the other religions. But yet this particular religion they've used the Bible to inflict a lot of damage across centuries of time. And so I wanted to make it relevant, bringing us to the current day. And so with this special episode, it's perfect timing because we've already went through the KKK, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. We've spoke a little bit about Black Lives Matter. And now we're going to talk a little bit about critical race theory. And I wanted to get into slavery and when it started here in America, and then sort of bring us to the present. But then having them here, I wanted to talk about my own journey, where being raised in this society and, having the family that I have or the school that I had or the community that I was in, and how racism is so systemic and we're not even aware of it. And so
no, it's invisible.
It really is. And I've learned a tremendous amount. But it's like I feel like Will Ferrell, Ricky Bobby, like I don't know what to do with my hands. Like I'm just standing around a bunch of people like, I don't know what to do, but I just want to keep tackling the subject, it's a tough subject. So, and if you don't mind, I want to play that one we decided not to play. We spoke about it in some earlier podcasts that we didn't want to play it because we thought it might be offensive, but I shared it with my family here, my aunt and uncle, and they said that it was cool. And so if anybody's mad, y'all can get mad at them. It ain't my fault.
That ain't right.
Yeah. So do you mind playing that, Andy?
Not at all.
Sometimes I make comments and I don't realize that I'm being so politically incorrect or so wrong about it, but I grew up, in this time like you guys did, we're in our 40s and we came up this, and I said at work one time, I said, do you remember when you could smack a broad and it was okay? And they were like, what? Like, you can't say that. And I was like, have you ever watched a movie from the 40s? It's like, woman, you're hysterical. Smack, smack, smack. It's like, oh, thank you. I was hysterical.
Yeah, totally. Like, yeah. And then, thank you.
Thank you for... I mean, it's so sexist and misogynist. It's not even funny.
Yeah. It's funny for a different reason now. I think that it was sort of intended to be funny then, but
yeah. And you really want to know the shocking thing for me? I didn't realize how racist I actually was. I was like, wow.
But not you specifically. I empathize with that point.
He's like, yeah, you really are racist.
Man, you were out there. No, not
but
at all.
But in all reality, like my aunt is married to a black man, and then she has mixed children, and she had been married previously and had a white husband, and they had a white son. And she told me that she has literally raised them differently because of the racism in society. She said that she raised her first son and never told him, hey, if you get pulled over by a cop, you need to do these specific things so they don't jerk you out of the car and beat you to death. Never came across her mind. But then she has these mixed children and she's got a black husband, and then suddenly they get pulled over. And the father has trained them and said, this is how you speak respectfully. This is where you put your hands. This is how you act. If
So
you
wild.
don't, they will kill you. And I was like, what? Like, I was shocked by it. And then all of this stuff that's been going around, like, I completely empathize. I don't understand it because I wasn't raised black. I don't know what
Sure,
it's like, but it's
absolutely.
obvious. And so now it's almost like the Republicans, of which I am in the camp of, which is, I apologize in advance, everybody, but there's almost like a Jim Crow 2 kind of thing going on right now. And I don't know, it's just very bizarre. I don't know how we got on this subject, but you know,
Well, it is one of those things. I mean, I was raised in a all white little town in like just the pervasive atmosphere of it. And it's just like people are making like racist jokes, but it's just like, it's not even because there's no, where, at least where I'm from, there's no people of any color except white around you.
sure.
And so like these jokes are just dumb jokes. And it's not like you're thinking about anybody particular would, because you don't even know a single black person.
Right.
It's when you say them, and they're just these like weird general straw man jokes that are really about real people, but kind of you
Mhm.
don't understand that.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's just pervasive enough and common enough that you just kind of don't give it a second thought until you get somewhere a little broader.
Yeah, no
which
kidding.
is a terrible thing to say, but it is
Yeah.
like, yeah.
Forgive the sad sack humor in this, but just to give you an idea, I had a man ask me one time, he said, what do you call a black man that flies a plane? And I was like, what? Like, that was my
Oh,
answer.
yeah.
That was my answer.
Yeah,
and he
I've
was like,
I've heard this one.
pilot?
A pilot.
I was like, oh man. And they're like, a pilot, you racist?
Yeah,
And
totally.
I was like, oh. And then we laugh, and then you walk away from it and you're like, why didn't I answer the question properly? I know the answer. Do you get it?
It's honestly, that's a trap. It's a trap of framing. When you frame it as a joke, so instantly you're looking for the jag. And so that is a trap.
I
to be fair.
blame Lucifer,
I blame Lucy. Yes.
that falling star. Yeah. Anyway, that was yeah.
It's not terrible radio, as revealing as it unfortunately is.
I know it. As I was sitting here listening to that, I was thinking about when I was young, my dad, and my dad, I would not call him like a terrible racist, but he absolutely is. Like he is racist by his upbringing. But I remember as a kid, we were playing basketball at my house, and I had some kids over from the school, and one of them, I won't say his name, just because of, I don't want to say it without him, without asking his permission. But I had one black kid from the basketball team that was there, and we were all playing around. This was at the old house over on Naples Road, and you remember when we poured the slab and we had So we were playing basketball there, and Dad walks out of the house, and he goes, "Hey boy, come here." Well, that's what my dad called me, boy. Like my dad called me boy when I was a kid. And so the other kid, the black kid, is just like, "Yes, sir," and starts walking towards me. I was like, no. I don't mean that, And when that happened, I just, like, it polarized. Like, I'm talking about it today. Like, I remember it, and I thought, man, I can't imagine.
Yeah, that is interesting. That why is that a conditioned response?
Right.
When he probably was looking at you when he said that.
Yeah, I mean, it
but
was-
somehow that's been a conditioned thing.
Obviously. I mean, what do you think, AJ? Like,
Yeah, I've had that. I've been called that quite a few times, actually. Yeah.
have you? Yes. Really?
Teachers, law enforcement, even bosses, even, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
That's just weird.
Yeah.
And to what age, I guess, is the
Age? Yeah, definitely older gentlemen.
Yeah,
older
that's
gentlemen. Yes.
kind of what I was vibing, but I just wanted it to be said out loud that it wasn't necessarily when you were 8, probably. It probably continued into the years where it was weird. I assume.
Very much so,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah, and I mean, there's really nothing similar to it. I was called a hippie once, but that didn't mean, what I mean? It's not even the same. Like, there's no conditioning there to that.
No, it doesn't have the connotations.
No.
Well, it does a little bit, but if you don't associate with that group, then it doesn't hit.
Right.
If you don't associate with the group, then the insult doesn't land.
Right. And I'm going to try to remember this later, but hippies and black people actually have a lot more in common than you realize. And
Which is
it's not even a
hilarious
joke.
because hippies all turn into Republican yuppies at some point in their life.
Eventually,
It happens to almost all of the well-intentioned ones.
yeah,
It's weird.
It's pretty odd, but that's actually systemic too, and I'm going to get into that because they have some similarities in the way that our government and its war on drugs and the way that these things worked and the institutionalized, incarcerated people and how it changed our society. It's pretty fascinating, really. We're going to get into that.
It kind of all goes hand in hand.
It really does.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't even realize it. I watched a documentary called The 13th about the 13th Amendment, the abolishing of slavery, and the effect that the government had after the abolition of slavery and Jim Crow laws and all the way up to the present. And it's shocking. I had no clue how conditioned we were just by media itself and how we're taught. And then also how we're taught in the education system, the way things are set up. It's pretty crazy.
It was kind of like they intended it that way, though.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, of course. No, it was definitely planned. I've got a crazy quote. I was going to read it later, but since you just said that, I'm going to go ahead and read it now. All right. So this is I didn't put this in the notes. Okay. So this is kind of shocking. So we all know President Nixon is the one who actually coined the phrase war on drugs.
It wasn't Nixon.
It was Nixon. I thought it was Reagan.
Yeah,
Me
that's-
too, yeah.
But it
what I
wasn't. It was actually Nixon. And AJ, you might want to eat that mic a little bit more.
Yeah, just
There you go. Yeah, just a little bit closer.
Yeah.
We definitely want to be able to hear you. But so this is the Nixon advisor, and his name is John Ehrlichman. If you've never heard of him, look him up. But this is a quote. The Nixon campaign in 1968 and the Nixon White House after that had two enemies, the anti-war left and black people. You understand what I'm saying? We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or black, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and the blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities. We could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night on the evening news. Did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did.
Who is this again?
John Ehrlichman, a Nixon advisor.
Okay.
I mean, we're talking about the Nixon White House here.
Yeah, he's apparently kind of a bastard on a lot of levels.
Oh, he's a bastard everywhere.
Everywhere.
Like, yeah. When he says, I'm not a crook, it's like, man, really? Like, that guy was the worst. But anyway, so Joan, I said in that quote, or I said in that earlier bit that you had explained the differences. Do you feel like, is it very noticeable for you?
It is noticeable. Now, I mean, with Travis, it was just normal or whatever. It mainly started not with the biracial children, our children, but with the older ones, his kids, And I never thought about it until we started talking about it, and he brought it to my attention. You have to do things differently with these boys, because people look at them differently, and it's absolutely true. I mean, it's night and day compared to, well, even with the younger ones, it's kind of different because they are biracial, so kind of people look at them a little different than they do the older ones too. If that makes any sense.
There's a
to
whole
you.
different thing going on there.
Yeah, because they just, I don't know.
They kind of, to me, they catch it, the mixed kids, they catch it from both sides.
Yeah.
if you
They
know
don't
what I mean.
fit in.
Yeah.
Either way, you know what I'm saying? If that makes sense.
Before you guys got together, now this sounds racist, I'm sorry, but before you got together, did anybody say to you, it's going to be harder for the children?
My Granny Cox.
Granny Cox said it's not about you two, but it's going to be harder for the
She
kids.
said, I don't care who you marry or who you're with, as long as they treat you right. Just don't have any children with him, she said. And I was like, Granny, why? Why would you say that? And she was like, because do you know how hard life is going to be on those kids?
Yeah.
They're going to be made fun of. They're going to be picked on. They're, all this stuff. Don't have kids. That's what she told
By
me.
both races. Now, is that true? Would you say it's true?
Yes, to a certain
I'm,
extent.
I'm sure it is, depending on who you run into. But
Because to me, it's shocking that even today, it's still as rampant as it's always been. It's like it's never going to change. How do we change this? Like, how do you change the narrative, man, to where people can be with whoever they want to be with, and enough of this madness.
More of this.
Yeah.
Actually, this helps a lot. But
Yeah.
a lot of people are scared to actually do this, though.
Right.
Because it's almost like they think it's got to turn to a real altercation. It's going to get physical. But if more people could sit down in a situation like this and discuss it calmly, civilly, it would help a lot.
Sure. I mean, I'm not going to get into a physical altercation with anybody. Like for me, like the most physical I'm going to get is sitting on my couch eating ice cream.
You'd
like
probably
that-
get tied up in that vest if you tried.
This vest has 42 pockets in it, designed by Paul Allen, the co-founder of Microsoft. Yeah, how cool is that, huh? Always a different vest. But yeah, I mean, that for me, that's one of the things that I wanted to tackle, is Christianity is not supposed to perpetuate hate, but they have done so. It's happened that way. And now being a Christian and seeing that, I've actually, been shown a lot of hate, by people even in my own church, the fold. Just it gives a bad taste in the mouth of anyone. And that is not what Christ teaches. He never taught hate. He taught the truth. People that were disenfranchised in this world, he was their advocate. He was there to, he loved the quote unquote sinners, the prostitutes. He went to the fishermen. He didn't go to the religious of the time. In fact, he went after the religious because they had forgotten about, love and charity and help. They were just so busy being lawful and good and sitting at the best tables. And, that's not what Jesus would. So when it comes to racism, when I think about the KKK and then I remember the Birth of a Nation and then the church, by the way, I also learned this, the burning cross. Do you know where that actually came from?
Is it from A Birth of a Nation?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was on the 1915 film, the silent film, The Birth of a Nation. And the only reason why is because the director and the producer, D.W. Griffith, said it was good for cinema.
Really?
And so it's art imitating life. That it never
life
happened before.
yeah,
Oh
life
yeah, sorry,
imitating
life imitating art. Isn't that crazy?
That's fascinating.
I always thought it was just something that, we're just going to, copy what was going on in life. Nope. He created it, and from there on out, the KKK adopted it.
Oh, man. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the preacher who brought it back, in the 30s, he had stated that the reason why they burned the cross is because of Christ and his light and all that. It wasn't. It was just, there was no meaning behind it initially. It was just.
It was cinematic.
Good, yeah, it was good.
Cinematic.
Good movie stuff,
Wow.
man. Yeah, had no idea. So anyway, well, what I want to do now is I just want to do this like really quick, and you know what I mean by quick.
Yeah.
2.5 hours. No, but I'm going to go through the history. I wanted to learn a little bit more about where this started, and we're going to get to the Bible here in a second. But I want to talk about America. There is an article written by E.R. Shipp, and it was printed in the USA Today on February 9th, 2019. By the way, do you know what happened 401 years ago today?
No.
The Mayflower arrived.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we recorded a Thanksgiving episode, but we haven't released it yet. But yeah, it was 401 years ago. It was November 11th.
Wow. Right in time for the winter. Good job, guys.
I know. Remember we talked about how cold it
So
was.
smart.
Yeah. Let's go over there when it's like crazy, crazy cold.
Right as everything's dying, we're going to show up.
I bet you it was cheaper. The investors were probably trying to make it cheaper. They gave them the speed well that kept, leaking and
Well, it might be one of those things. If you're not super familiar with the weather patterns and you look at a map of the longitude
yep.
of England and compare that to the longitude of even Boston, it looks like you've gone quite a bit south, even
Yes.
though it's colder in Boston than it is in England, just because of the way the current of the Atlantic goes.
Right.
So you might be able to just look at that map and have lived in England or even Spain or something and be like, oh, just going to be like winters in Spain.
Yeah, no
And it's not.
problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really wasn't. It was brutal. 50 of them died. All right, so I'm going to read this article. The article is titled 1619, 400 years ago, a ship arrived in Virginia bearing human cargo. After having been kidnapped from their villages in what is present-day Angola, forced onto a Portuguese slave ship bound for what Europeans called the New World, and stolen from that ship by English pirates in a confrontation off the coast of Mexico, some 20 and odd Negroes landed at Point Comfort in 1619 in the English settlement that would become Virginia. Their arrival was duly noted by the colony's secretary, John Rolfe, famous as the widower of the Native American woman called Pocahontas. The harrowing journey that began with about 350 Africans on board the San Juan Bautista was one of terror, hunger, and death even before the encounter with the pirates. About half of the Africans who boarded the Portuguese ship died. When the San Juan Bautista docked near what is now Veracruz, Mexico, on August 30th, 1619, there were 147 Africans on board. 50 had been taken by those English pirates aboard 2 ships, the White Lion and the Treasurer. When the White Lion arrived unheralded in Point Comfort, the captain's immediate task was to sell the Africans in exchange for food. I mean, that's crazy. Few ships before or since have unloaded a more momentous cargo, historian and journalist Lerone Bennett wrote in his 1962 book, Before the Mayflower, A History of the Negro in America. It also needs to be noted that the subtitle was changed in later editions to the history of Black America. So to me, it's like 1619 and the slave trade hits America. Now, there were black men and women that actually came over during the time, like, was it Sir Walter Raleigh? There were, but I don't know how it works, but there was no slavery. I think they believe this is about when it started, was in 1619.
Really?
Yeah. So here we are 402 years later.
It's funny because it's a thing you sort of don't think of as having a start in a way.
Right.
And I know like everything had to start somewhere, right? Like it didn't exist before Europe, or at least in this form, slavery didn't exist before Europeans arrived. So of course it had to begin at some point, but it's a thing I don't think of as having, and just like being endemic to the beginning.
And there probably were people that came before that. Let's just be real. I mean, they were here in the 1500s.
Sure, but that's like that was on books. It was a
right. This is recorded
business
history
venture. Yeah,
yeah. And so they're saying they're going to sell Africans for food. They're selling people so they can get food.
So wild. That is a wild sentence.
Isn't that crazy?
That is a whole sentence.
What was it?
Wild.
Yeah, it's like George Carlin's things I never thought I would say in a sentence. Like that. Yeah, it's awful.
It's just, it's numbing.
But now the slave trade had actually been going on. Slavery's been around since man was made. I mean, it's always happened.
Sure.
And there are biblical, slave stories, and the Hebrews themselves, one of their biggest stories, they were slaves to the Egyptians, right? And then Moses comes and gets them out of slavery. So slavery is a pretty common thing in the Bible.
Free labor.
Yes, and it gets very weird in America. It's taken 402 years just to get where we are, and we're still dealing with it.
Yeah.
That's scary.
400 years.
You feel like, I mean, I know it's everywhere, but maybe this is my ignorance, but it feels like worse here than other first world nations. And I know it exists everywhere, but is it worse here, or is that my ignorance in a general sense?
Well, it really depends. I mean, it depends on the country that you're in and who they are, who the problem is with what race they have. Like, have you noticed?
Germany had a little problem with racism.
You're just
and we laugh. It is true,
Yeah.
But yeah, with the Jewish race, I mean, Germany had that problem.
Or in whoever, really. I mean,
Yeah.
they were
Gypsies, homosexuals,
anybody
Jehovah's Witnesses.
Anybody you could pick out of a crowd, probably.
Yeah, anybody that, it's crazy to find out that Adolf Hitler actually was part of the Jewish race. Like, he had a Jew in his lineage. So who knew? But anyway, I think I'm speaking from as an American, in a nation that we say was founded on Christian principles. That's what this podcast is about. Preconceived notions, things that we've been taught, and trying to unlearn them. So I want to unlearn this. Like I want to figure out, because I still have racist tendencies inside me. I do. That's a scary thing to say in front of you. But what I mean is like this. I'm going to explain it. Okay? And maybe you can help me out here.
Get out the shovel.
Yeah.
No, but seriously. Now, I'm going to be honest. Let's just be honest,
Yes.
okay?
Yeah, sure.
Totally,
No, I'm just
totally.
picking on you.
Right. So let's say that I'm walking in downtown Hendersonville and I go down one of the side alleys and I'm going to cut down across because I want to go to Canoga. I'm on my way to Hot Dog World. And there's 3 pretty sizable black men. One of them got, like cornrows, and they're just walking. One of them's got like a wife beater on. He's got some muscles, And I have this little well of fear pop up. Why? Why am I afraid? See?
Yeah. Sure.
Why am I afraid?
Sure.
Do you feel the same way when police officers roll up?
Yes.
Because I don't. Like, I don't get afraid when I see police officers.
Even when I'm totally in the right and I know that I haven't done anything wrong.
Right. But yet, I've never had a black man beat me in my life.
Yeah. You have no personal.
I have
yeah.
nothing that has taught me to act like that. Why do I feel that way?
I think maybe it's just, is it the unknown?
I don't feel that way when there's 3 muscular white guys that are walking down on this alleyway. I don't understand
that's
why.
true.
This is like, it's just, it happens. It's inside. And I ask myself, you don't even know these people. In fact, they might have just came from a church service at First Baptist where they were playing basketball, and that's why they were wearing those shirts, because they didn't want to sweat in their nice shirts or whatever. It could have been anything at all, and I don't know the first thing, but yet I'm afraid.
Yeah,
and I'm
you have a
thinking,
reaction.
You got to figure society, all movies, social media, they have just
true.
drilled it into us that black guys that look like that, yeah, they're probably going to come beat you down. They're going to rob you.
Right.
They probably sell drugs, and there's just nothing good about them.
So, like, just like that quote said, that we'll vilify them night after night on the evening news.
Yeah.
I grew up in the 80s during the war on drugs.
Sure.
And let's be honest, it was probably 99% black people getting thrown on the ground and cuffed and saying that they, it was a big bust, and then they got all this crack and
80s,
all this.
yeah, it was crack. I was going to say
Crack.
that. Inner cities and crack. And
Yeah.
That's a wild story. We probably don't have entirely time to go into, but for anybody that doesn't know, the government was selling crack in urban neighborhoods in order to make obscene amounts of money to finance war against the Contras. That's a real thing that our government did on purpose
I'll
to
take it
black neighborhoods in order to fund wars in the
I'll
Middle
take it to
East.
the next level. They got a 2-fold blessing out of it, because what they were doing was they were selling it and making this money to the black neighborhoods, but then they were arresting the people that were dealing it. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Like to
Yeah,
lower
yeah.
the crime rate, to boost the numbers so that they could vote it in, so they could continue this perpetual,
Exactly.
control.
Because by doing that, you're taking the black father out of the home.
Right.
Okay, so now you got a young black man growing up without a father. He goes out and he sees the drug dealer outside. He's the one that everybody respects. He's the one with the flashy car and all the money and everything. So instead of that kid wanting to grow up to be a lawyer, he wants to be like that drug dealer now.
Sure.
Because he gets all the respect. So now you've got that loop going right back around again.
Sure.
He'll be arrested and put into the system. He won't be there for his son. And it's like a revolving door. It just keeps
Vicious
going.
cycle, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And I can say this. I feel like anything I say is going to be racist, so just everybody forgive me now. I'm just saying it. I'm just talking out loud here. So, AJ, I watch you work your ass off. I mean, you work, 6-7 days a week. You never stop. And I also see, Joan, how much effort you put into the children with their education, with their clothing, with their life every day. Like, you both do so. Constantly working for your family, going through all the struggles, and they are the most respectful kids that I've ever met.
Well, thank you.
They are. And that shows. So you have a father who is present, a father who is actually, and let's be real, I don't know, you may not even be getting paid what you should be getting paid. Who knows? And that could be because of the color of your skin. I don't know. But I'm just saying, but he works and works and works to provide. And so now we have these respectful children that are being educated, that are, and you guys have a lot of things to deal with.
Oh, it's constant. 24 hours. Yeah.
Always something.
So you mix the interracial relationship, and then the biracial children, and then you take all of society and all the things that it's teaching. I mean, it's a mess. You know,
Yeah.
it's just, it seems like it would be, but yet you make it work.
Who was it? Xavier, when he was in the 5th grade. His 5th grade teacher told him that slavery wasn't real, that it was all made up.
Holy, are you serious?
A teacher told
That
him
is
that it was not real, that it was
wild.
something that they made up just to make it interesting in the history books.
I am.
It floored me.
aghast.
It floored me when he come home and said that. You know, and you know, we've been fortunate in this area that they really haven't had to deal with a lot of racism as far as, you know, cops and, you know, all the stuff that's going on now. I'm not saying it can't happen here. I'm just saying so far we haven't had to deal with that, especially with Xavier. He's in Greensboro now, you know, at NCA&T.
Right.
Scared me to death to send him there because it's such a bigger place. And it's a predominantly black.
It's an HBCU.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
predominantly black college that he goes to. So I don't know. I think he was a little nervous about going too because, you know, he went to Hendersonville. Hendersonville's pretty diverse. So it scared me
Have you
to
noticed
send
the
him
change
there.
in his behavior at all since he has been to a predominantly black school versus what being raised here? I mean, now of course he is maturing at the same time, so there is that. You know, he's on his own. Have you noticed any kind of difference? Like,
Oh yeah.
yeah, in what way?
He's growing up and he's learning to really form his own opinion about a lot of things.
Yeah.
Not just, oh, my dad says it this way, so this is what I believe. No, he's learned to form his own opinion about things.
'Tis the age.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's a lot to do with it too. But he did make a comment the first time he came home. He's in his 2nd year, right? So the first year, you know, he spent a lot of time with us, and I don't know. Me and his mother are different. We parent different. We have different parenting styles. And
sure.
I'm not saying that's because of race or just personality or what, but he did come home and he said that he realized being there around all of his new friends when they share stories about how they were raised, how their, you know, mothers handled certain situations or how they were talked to or whatever. And he thought it was just his mom. And he realized that he was like, it must be black moms, you know, this is how they raise their children. This is the things they say to them. This is how they punish them compared to me.
Right.
You know, I don't parent
You just
the
take
same
their
way.
candy away.
Yeah. So, no, I'll go buy them and hide it behind the thing. Don't let your dad see this, you know. But yeah, there's, that's a big one to me. And I didn't know how to feel about that.
Right.
You know, I didn't know whether I should be offended. I get really offended when somebody says something about my parenting because
Yeah, you're like, am I doing something wrong? Wait,
yeah,
what's going on here?
you know, I get totally offended if somebody says something about my parenting. It really offends me bad because I feel like I do more than a lot. You know what I'm saying? I do as much as I can, and I put myself out so that my children have.
You're definitely a very involved parent.
And
That is for sure.
yeah, and I just feel like, you know, if somebody says something, so I didn't know how to deal with that comment with him at first. You know, I was
Sure.
like, are you saying that I'm not a good parent? You know, that's totally not what he was saying. But at first, I didn't know how to take that. But that's the one thing that he realized was different, that it wasn't just his mom, but it was the same with his friends that he's made there too, because he didn't have a lot of black friends here, to be
more
honest.
of a-
More of his friends here that he played ball with and that he hung out with were white, you know, so he was more used to white parents being around white moms or
would
whatever.
you say that would you say that your mom raised you kind of similar as to where other black moms would raise their sons?
Oh, yes, definitely. 100%. 100%. Yes.
So it's cultural.
Yes, it's definitely a culture thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't.
That's wild. I'm interested to know what those differences
Me too.
are.
Like I really want to know, but
Well, he says I baby the kids too much. I'm too soft. I baby them. And black mothers are harder on their kids, and they're not as, I'm a helicopter mom. I hover, you know, I'm like, oh, don't get hurt. Don't do that. You're going to get hurt. Don't, you know, and, you know, Joyce is like, boy, you're going to get out there and crack your head open, and I'm like, no, don't do that. Come here. I'm just,
I said, do not fall.
yeah. She's always, her saying is always, the hospital's closed. So if you bust your head open, the hospital's closed. I'm not taking you to the hospital, but I'm one of those hover parents.
I wonder if it has to do with they are actually preparing these young men for
That's
the
where I
society
was
they're growing
going.
into.
That's
Are you
exactly
going to say that?
it. Yeah. That's what it comes down to. Because let's face it, it's harsh for a black man, especially a black man in America. So for me, as raising one, I'm trying to show him that not everybody's going to give you that hand to help you up. 9 times out of 10, they're probably going to try and step on you to get over top of where you are right now. So yes, I tend to be a little more harsh with them. Can I say a little more real?
Yeah.
If you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
just, I'm trying to show them what the world is going to be and how the world looks at them. So yeah, I parent a little more, actually a lot more harsh than she does.
So because the society that we live in, you have to raise your son in a way that you maybe wouldn't if it wasn't because of the society.
Definitely.
You would raise him more like the way that Joan would, right? But you know what's real. Now, here's the weird part. That's a part of systemic of the system, right? So that perpetuates it too, just like what I do with my children perpetuates whatever is going on. So I feel like, are you following what I'm saying, Andy?
Yeah, you don't want to set up expectations that are self-fulfilling.
That are self-fulfilling.
And I'm not saying that's happening, but I'm saying that's what you're saying. Like
But I
that,
would say that the culture itself, it's the cart before the horse, the chicken before the egg kind of thing, because of everything that happened with slavery, because of the Jim Crow laws, because of the war on drugs, because of all of the incarcerations, mass incarcerations, huge. Does anybody remember super predators, the word super predators?
Yes.
vaguely, yes.
I mean, super predators, they were seen as animals. It's almost like Birth of a Nation. When you saw a black man in that movie, he was literally like a beast. And then you've got like Hillary Rodham Clinton, who is a Democrat, who is talking about these super predators, and it's always aimed
Wild.
towards the black people.
no, totally. It's
And
implied.
so it's always implied. They don't necessarily say it, but it's implied. And that's what we see on news. And so for me, I see all of these bad guys, and they're mainly black, that are getting tackled and put on. You watch Cops very rarely if it's a white man. Hey man, he's just getting hammered drunk, and he's not a threat, but he's just his wife beat him up and put a telephone cord around his neck, and so she was going to get arrested that night. I don't know if you saw that episode; it was great.
Yes.
He beat
I don't
the
think
snot. The woman beat the snot out of the husband and wrapped the phone cord around his neck. I don't know how I got on that subject, but anyway, but talking about cops and watching things on TV,
Well,
So-
when you talk about if you're walking down the alley and you see the 3 black guys coming at you, is that when you were younger, or are you saying that you still feel that way
I'm
now?
saying it now.
So you still do now.
Yeah, no, I don't. You won't see it on my face. I will just go on with my life because I force myself inside. I say, you don't know them. Stop doing that. But it's naturally happening inside of me. So I would never respond. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah,
so if
because
I say that I'm still racist, I'm being honest. I don't want this.
There's an intellectual level where you understand that this is bullshit, but you're just like, but that's a secondary response to
Yeah.
something chemical and that you don't necessarily have
Fight
full
or
control
flight.
over.
Fight or flight.
Yeah.
It's something that's been ingrained inside me. It's still there. I don't understand why it's there. I recognize it. I call it out, just like sin, Oh, that woman looks hot. I'm not going to run over there and try to rape her. You know what I mean? Like, of course, rape's not my thing, but I'm not going to.
No.
But I'm not going to run over and like try to woo this. I'm married. I'm happily married. I'm not going to go try to talk to a woman. You see what I mean? So I understand my sin. It's like something that just happens. But with this, it actually hurts my heart because I'm like, and can you imagine if you could actually just go through life and just trust, but you can't.
But you have to I need 2 things I want to say about that. First of all, you're walking down the street and you see 3 black guys walking at you and it makes you feel like that. But then in your head, you need to put yourself in his shoes, and he walks into work and he's the only black guy there. How do you think he feels when he walks in?
Right.
there?
There's got to be a lot of times where he sees
I'm
people
not-
and he's like,
I would never say I can only imagine. Like that's what I'm saying about when I look at those three gentlemen and I'm like, I don't know them. They could have just come from that basketball court over there, and they're
Exactly.
just walking. They're going to go get a chocolate milkshake like I am.
Yeah.
But they look a lot better because they play basketball, and I'm sitting around eating. You know,
But
I'm
see,
not doing anything.
that has never bothered me. I can drive down Woodcock right now. I could drive down anywhere, 7th Avenue, any predominantly black neighborhood. I'm not going to lock my doors.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that doesn't bother me at all. It doesn't scare me. It doesn't bother me. But I went looking for some property for Mom one day.
Did you
And
go to
went out-
Redneckville?
Went out in Edneyville. And
I'm
it's-
scared of those places too.
It
though, yeah.
is this road that looked, yeah, exactly. It looked like something off a wrong turn. I turned down this driveway and it's just eerie trees, you know, all this stuff. And then I get into a clearing and it tells me to go, you know, off to the right. And all of a sudden there's rebel flags in every window of every house there. And then there's big pieces of plywood that says "keep out or you will be shot."
Oh yeah,
That scared me to death. And I'm like,
that
I
is
got to get out of
intentionally
here.
intimidating.
I told my
Yeah.
mom, I said, I'm sorry, but nope, I'm not going any further in this. That terrified me. But I can go in a black neighborhood or, you know, whatever, and it doesn't bother me. But rebel flags, all like that, and then signs and all that stuff, that scares me
Well, they're being
a lot.
declarative with it. I
Yeah.
mean, that's why those
But I'm
flags
white.
are up.
You would think I could go in there and they're not going to bother me, right?
Well,
but
I
it
don't know.
scares
You
me.
Still don't. You still don't.
You still don't
really
know. Exactly.
So
Yeah.
how do
Right?
I fix that? How do I fix that in me?
Oh Lord, who knows? Because I mean, you heard that little snippet. Like I'm from that all-white town, and I say that at a certain point when I was a teenager, like the only. Well, there were two black families, but one I never knew. And I was never near them because they were adults. They had jobs. I was a kid. I literally never interacted with them. I only heard that they existed. And the only other black family that had teenage children moved in next door to me when I was a teenager. We were friends with all of them. There was, so I was friends with them for years. But it was like that was my exposure. Where was I going with this story?
About how to change?
Oh, so I thank that for like what I do have as far as like not being totally weird, but still, it's just I think it just takes forever. I think it takes forever. It's
Yeah.
like I just in my 30s I discovered that like there's this way that well-intentioned white people have of interacting with black people where it's the way you treat a dog. It's not the way you treat a human. You like dogs. You want to be friends with a dog, but you walk up to a dog with your guard up.
Yes.
Well, many a well-intentioned white person is doing that to black people. They're not treating them like a full human, no matter how much they want to.
Would
They're
you agree
still
with that?
approaching
Yes,
them
totally.
like a dog.
Right.
See, I've had to actually, believe it or not, do that myself. Where I was raised, I moved here from Fort Valley, Georgia. And literally, there still to this day, there is a place everybody calls the white folk section, which is just across the tracks. When I lived there, as a black person, if you walked on Main Street, you didn't even look a white person in the eyes. And then we moved here in 88, I think it was. Yeah, 88. And I was going to Hendersonville School here in town. But then after about a year, we moved to Edneyville. My very first day
Huge.
at Edneyville, before I could step foot off the bus, I was called the N-word at least 10 times.
Really.
Well, it's just that little bit of moving out of a
Yeah.
slightly denser area.
Back then, every time I heard it, oh man, we were throwing blows.
Right.
I was fighting about it. And it got to a point to where it was happening so much that they couldn't give me the attention anymore. They didn't want to suspend me for it. When, like I said, I felt like I was just defending myself.
Right.
So it became, oh, you get to stay after school for 30 minutes and help the janitor clean the school. And after about 2 years of it, I looked at myself and I'm like, why does that word piss you off so bad? Why do you have to get physical every time you hear that word? Like, I started to think myself, this is probably making me just as ignorant as they are. So I kind of had to, like we were talking, I kind of had to like wean myself off of that, like try and take a little bit of the sting of that word out. And it just happened to become like, even still this day, my two best friends are white guys. Yeah. I've known them since we were in 4th grade. We don't talk as much as we used to, but I had to learn to get past that.
That's true for any race.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
You just grow apart.
Right before I came here, I was talking to a buddy, a white friend at work, and what was said? We were talking about how you said if you walk into a room full of black guys, why does that make you nervous? He was like, well, I would get nervous, but why does that make me racist?
Yeah.
And I can't get him to understand that I'm not saying you're running around burning crosses and flying the flags and, screaming N-word all the time. But what you are doing is just as bad.
Yeah.
Or look at me like, oh, well, you're not your typical black guy.
Yeah. I always wanted to make a film where the black race were the powerful race.
Oh, that's God. That's
Does it exist?
Yeah. What is it?
It's called Cracker.
Okay, I've seen
It's
it.
actually out. They had it up on Prime for a little
It
while,
actually
but
exists.
I think it got took down.
It shows that the blacks were in power and that the white were slaves.
I want to
Yeah.
say it was originally produced by HBO
Yes.
a while ago. Yeah,
Yes, it
I've
was.
seen it, and that's exactly.
I'm gonna watch it.
It's
Yeah,
a racial.
I've
a
always
racial
wondered,
swap,
like, what would it look like, to reverse, reverse that race, and to see how, how would we act? Are we going to act the same, or is it going to be a little bit different? Really curious.
Watching it, as I sit here as a black man, I will not lie to you. As watching it, it made me uncomfortable.
Really?
Like seriously sick to my stomach, uncomfortable to watch it.
Really?
Yeah. But I feel the same way when I watch Roots as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that Bill Burr bit about Roots. Have you ever heard of him?
Yes.
I don't remember the bit, but I've probably heard it.
He talks about like how many more movies are going to be made, about, white power and how strong we are, and these disenfranchised black people. It's like now they have like a movie about the all black swimming team, and it's like, are we down to that now? Like it used to be like football and then it was like basketball. Now it's the swim team.
It's all been made.
They've got that racist white guy over in the corner. Get out of the pool, like.
What's the sport that the Canadians do with the
curling?
Yes.
An all black curling team. Yeah, I mean, just
that the Canadians do. That's also funny, by the way.
yeah. I'm racist towards Canadians too. Actually, I hate the French. I've only met one French woman that I actually like, but I am not a fan of the French people.
They're legitimately kind of rude.
Dude, when I was over there, they were they were jerks. But anyway, that's another story. We'll talk about hating them later. All right. Well, this is good. I'm like, I like where we're going with this. I mean, I feel like like the way Andy just said it, well-intentioned white people. Look, do you feel like these well-intentioned white people are looking at you like a dog? Like, are you aware of it?
Yes.
You are aware of it.
Yes.
So they're giving off that vibe.
Yeah.
I figured that out about myself, but I see it
Right.
everywhere
Mm-hmm.
since
Yeah.
I figured it out. You just like, you want to be friends, but there's the difference between how you approach a dog and how you approach a human. And you approach a dog like it might bite you.
Right.
You don't approach another fucking human that way.
Right.
And that's the difference. And it's people that really want to be on the good side of things they do this because they don't know.
It's like saying those guys that say, I'm not racist, I have black friends. That's so cliche. It's so
It is so.
cliche.
Well, so like he gets so mad because, like he said a while ago, people are always telling him, "Well, you're not the typical black man. You don't act
he
black.
acts more white.
You
so
don't
that
act
makes him
black.
better.
You're not the typical
Exactly.
black man." That makes him, I think, more mad for somebody to say that to him than it would be if they called him the N word.
Right.
He's like, "What does that even mean?" Like, I don't understand.
It took me a while to figure out why black people who use the N-word have the right to use it. And I think it's a good thing, actually. I finally figured out they took the power back they took the power out of that word and they took the word back, and now they use it, and so you like older white people will be like, oh, they call it to themselves, they call each other that. They shouldn't. They took the power out of the word, and so like you said, you had to let it quit stinging you. So when they took that away, it stopped stinging. However, if a white man says it, that sting could still rear its ugly head, right?
Mm-hmm.
Totally does.
I'm saying we don't even allow that word in our house.
Right.
We try not to use it. And I got a very funny story about that. Back when Phineas was going to have his brain surgery, we actually took the rest of the kids down south to Georgia, where I'm from, and we left them with my aunt there. And we stayed the first day, and they go outside the first time to play. Okay, now it's N-word this, N-word that. They hear the kids there talking to each other, and every time they hear it, they're running in the house. He just called him the N-word. He just called him the N-word. And I'm like, that's cool, but don't you say it. Okay.
Yeah.
But we don't. We don't use that word in the house. They'll play video games every now and then, and you'll hear them slip up and say it.
Right.
Oh,
And
they'll say it if they don't think we can hear them say that.
They're not supposed to. That's
not
true about
supposed
any
to say
bad
it,
word.
yeah.
We're not allowed to say that in front
But
of our
it
parents.
is a bad word. It's a bad word. It's not supposed to be allowed, but like you said, you can hear them. They think that the walls are just, you can't hear anything there. So if you hear them say it here and there. But they have been having trouble here lately. The little ones at where they go to school
Sure.
have been having trouble with a lot of people calling them that.
Really?
And I'm thinking, at first it was like, oh, well, all the Hispanic kids think because they're brown that they can call us that and it's okay. But it's not okay.
Right.
And then there was a couple of white kids who Gianni's had trouble with here lately that keep calling him that. I mean, Gianni's hard to anger, or he kind of just laughs things off a lot,
Sure.
But for him to come to me and say, look, these kids are calling me this, and it hasn't stopped. It's been going on for a while. It's really bothering me. He wanted me to call the school. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, AJ knew the parents or the grandparents of the children, and he handled it. But it's crazy how much it's going on in middle school. I mean, we're talking about 13-year-olds, 12-year-olds.
Sure.
And why now? Like, why all of a sudden is this?
I just heard that these kids in middle school are having sex.
Yeah.
Sex in middle school?
And at this particular school, there's a nature trail.
Really?
And they go in the nature trail.
Good grief.
And they're doing it. And it's ridiculous what's happening in middle school now. I mean, things are starting so much earlier than when we were that age as far as everything.
I do think that just depends on where you were raised.
Yeah.
Because I know kids that did things in middle school, like not a lot.
I'm talking about
knew
full
them.
on sex,
Yeah.
man. I'm not talking about just like the normal things that I did when I was in middle school.
That's what I'm talking about too. So I don't think that's that much different. I think it's just circumstantial. I think you either get lucky or you kind of get unlucky. It's just
Yeah.
placement.
Sure.
And that's accidental mostly.
Well, so after I'm going to get back into this. So after these Africans are, and they are literally from Angola, and so the Africans are here. The slave trade continues and continues and continues. We all know that the Civil War, although the Emancipation Proclamation and the abolition of the abolishing of slavery happened because of the Civil War, it wasn't the reason for the Civil War.
Okay, so that's a falsehood that was taught in American history class. That is categorically untrue and was taught to people our age and older.
That what?
That trade was the real reason for the Civil War.
So that's
It was
not true?
Not.
Oh.
No, that's not true.
So
That
it was
is a
about
lie
slavery.
we learned in school.
Okay, well then let me ask you this question, because I agree with you. I'm going to go with you on that. But let me ask you this. So if all of these black people who were enslaved by these southern plantation owners, okay, if they are freed and then they have no economy, what have they done for them?
Well, that's kind of what happened, right?
Yes, but that's my point. If in fact they weren't trying to destroy the economy, because that's what they did. And that's because there were French and Spanish. The French was on the south and the Spanish was on the top or whatever on the north. But whichever way that was, I can't even remember. And I hate the French, so I could care less. But in reality here, if they freed the slaves, okay, guess what? You're free.
Most of those, a lot of what happened is people just worked for their former owners for basically slave wages.
You want to know what actually happened? The term chain gang became something, because what happened was now they became criminal, and they would arrest them for vagrancy, loitering, for whatever. Then they would put chains on them, put striped suits on them, and make them go out there and build railroads, build roads, cut down trees, log. Like,
that's interesting.
It was legalized.
That's where that
slavery
came from. Yeah, they just figured out a way around it.
Yeah, they became the chain gang. And look at the pictures of the chain gang. And by the way, the song that was sang by a black man. I mean, it was working on the chain gang, right?
Oh, don't you know?
Right.
Yes.
Now, just so you know, you look at that. So in my opinion, okay, fine, they were freed. It was a great thing, sure. But they gave them nothing. Now, there were people that did sharecropping.
Oh yeah, I mean that gets you all the way up to the civil rights movement of the 50s.
And then 40 acres and a mule. Wasn't that something that was made?
Is that from that time?
That was from the Civil War.
When they were freed, they were promised 40 acres and a mule.
Yeah.
Did they give them land next to the Indians?
I don't. All the way around the reservations. Yeah, I don't know.
And blankets too.
Wherever, the same blankets.
Yeah. Regardless, yeah, and you're right. We were taught, it wasn't just about slavery; it was about the economy. But it makes sense to me because economically they were destroyed, and then that's when criminal came into the mix, legalized.
Economics
slavery.
is always at play, but it was taught to people our age and older that it was that economics was the main reason, and slavery was a secondary consideration, sort of a because we're here thing.
Sure.
And actually, that's inverted.
Yeah,
That's inverted.
Yeah, I can see that. And so now let's imagine you have these slaveholders, and here's what they did to control them. They actually used the Bible, which is kind of weird. They used the Bible to perpetuate slavery because they said slavery was in the Bible and it was a legal thing and it was okay. And you don't have anything.
Sure.
And
So was murder and rape.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of stuff in the Bible.
Yeah, like I said, rape's not my thing. But as far as this, they would use the Bible. And listen to this. It says, early on, slaveholders were not concerned with the spiritual well-being of Africans, but few had qualms about using Christianity to justify slavery. Some theologians said it was providence that had brought Africans to America as slaves, since their enslavement would allow them to encounter the Christian message, and thus their eternal souls would be saved, said Mark Knoll, a historian of American Christianity. And I put in like caps, really? Like for real?
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Providence. Thank the Lord God made you a slave so that you could get saved. I mean, that's what they're saying. Some preachers encouraged slave owners to allow their slaves to attend worship services, though only in separate gatherings led by white pro-slavery preachers. They had to be seated in the back or the balcony of a segregated church. Those men of God argued that the sermons on the injunction in Ephesians and Colossians, quote, slaves, obey your earthly master, would promote docility among enslaved workers, just basically to keep them under control. At Washington's Museum of the Bible displays a slave Bible, which was published in 1807, which removed portions of scripture, including the Exodus story, that could inspire rebellious thinking. Some ministers promoted the idea that Africans were the descendants of Ham. Have you ever heard of this?
Yes.
What?
The descendants of Ham. So do you remember
Ham is a person.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The descendants of
I was very confused.
descendants of a very smoked glazed ham. No, but so Ham is one of the sons of Noah. And I've talked about this in the past. Ham was the one that looked at Noah when he was naked. Do you remember when I told you, like, after the flood, Noah gets off, he builds a vineyard, and he gets hammered drunk? Remember, he gets on wine?
Yeah.
And then what happens is he gets naked, he passes out, and so he has three sons, and two of them, Shem and Japheth, or Japhet, or however you say it, turn around backwards and don't look at him, and they bring a cover to cover him up. But Ham looked at him. Okay. And so when Noah finds out that Ham sees him, he he says, cursed is your son. Now, here's the thing. They always say the curse of Ham, but actually he says, cursed is your son, Canaan. And so that's why they believe that Canaanites are inferior. They will always be servants. So I'm going to read that part of scripture just so that you can see this. But basically it said, some ministers promoted the idea that Africans were the descendants of Ham, cursed in the book of Genesis, and thus their enslavement was fitting. So here it is in Genesis chapter 9, verse 18 through 27. The sons of Noah who went forth from the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham was the father of Canaan. These three were the sons of Noah, and from these the people of the whole earth were dispersed. Noah began to be a man of the soil, and he planted a vineyard. He drank of the wine and became drunk and lay uncovered in his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his two brothers outside. Then Shem and Japheth, let's say Japheth, I don't know, took a garment, laid it on both their shoulders, and walked backward and covered the nakedness of their father. Their faces were turned backward, and they did not see their father's nakedness. When Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his youngest son had done to him, he said, cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be to his brothers. He also said, blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant. May God enlarge Japheth, and let him dwell in the tents of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant. So this is where so from that, they say, that's where black came from, because Ham, supposedly, if you translate it, means dark, which actually it's actually incorrect. That's not true. And it wasn't even a curse on Ham, it was a curse on Canaan anyway. So it's just a bunch of crap. But they've been talking about this for 2,000 years. Did you know that?
No.
They have talked about this for 2,000 years. In the Middle Ages, even rabbis talked about this, saying that they believe that Ham and Canaan, that Ham had went into Africa, and that's where the blacks came from, and all that. It's all garbage. None of it's real, but yet they taught that, and that's what they taught the slaves.
Well, that's funny. I mean, it's not funny, but you know what I mean.
Oh, it's hilarious.
It's fascinating.
No, it's not
See,
hilarious.
I get a whole different interpretation of that.
Do you?
He's supposed to be the servant of servants, correct?
Right.
So is he saying that he should be the servant of God's servants?
Yeah, pretty much.
That's what I'm taking from that. Yeah.
Which is how, and they're using that as saying, we're God's servants, you're going to come, you're servants for us. And so it's just God. This is the way the Bible is, right? Yeah. So basically they take this message that they have and they even change the Bibles that they give to the slaves so that they don't read things that, could cause them to be rebellious.
That's right. They did give them like selectively edited Bibles. Yeah.
They sure did. And in the Old Testament, slavery was understood. Martin Luther King used the same story from Exodus where Moses is on the mountaintop and he looks at the promised land. He's talking about Moses and he's really saying it from himself, like, hey, I'm seeing the promised land. I may not make it. I may not get there with you. Yep. But so he's using the scriptures to talk about it. And the very thing that the slave holders were using to hold down the slaves ends up being the very thing that helped get their freedom. It really did. Like it led them to overcome it. So it's good and bad. But if anybody understood the Christian message at its core, which is to love one another and to sacrifice for others and to give, it's more blessed to give than to receive, like all of those things that hippie Jesus, like Andy likes, teaches, if they would follow that code of ethics, that life would be much better.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was going to read, this is from the Old Testament, Exodus 21, 1 through 11. This is the laws about slaves in the Bible. Now, these are the rules that you shall set before them. When you buy a Hebrew slave, he shall serve 6 years, and in the 7th he shall go out free for nothing. So if you bought a slave, he could only be a slave for 6 years, and then he was to be set free. If he comes in single, meaning unmarried, he shall go out single. If he comes in married, then his wife shall go out with him. If his master gives him a wife and she bears him sons or daughters, the wife and her children shall be her master's, and he shall go out alone.
Huh.
Right? Like, that's crazy. But if the slave plainly says, I love my master, my wife, and my children, I will not go out free. Then his master shall bring him to God, and he shall bring him to the door or the doorpost, and his master shall bore his ear through with an awl, and he shall be his slave forever.
That's wild.
That's Bible rules about slavery. When a man sells his daughter as a slave, she shall not go out as the male slaves do. If she does not please her master, who has designated her for himself, then he shall let her be redeemed. He shall have no right to sell her to a foreign people, since he has broken faith with her. If he designates her for his son, he shall deal with her as with a daughter. If he takes another wife to himself, he shall not diminish her food, her clothing, or her marital rights. And if he does not do these three things for her, she shall go out for nothing without payment of money. So this is something else that they would use for like the justification of slavery. See, it says right here in the Bible, I gave you a wife when you came in here. You gave me more kids, which are basically just more workers. You can go, but they can't.
And what man's going to walk away from that?
Nobody.
No, man. Yeah.
Not at all. All right. So you know how we've talked about the destruction of the temple, that it happened twice. Right? It happened during the prophet Jeremiah prophesied that the temple would be destroyed. And then in 583 BC, King Nebuchadnezzar II comes in, sacks Jerusalem, destroys the temple, carries the kids off to Babylon. And then that's where Daniel the prophet comes in and all that. All right. So Jeremiah, I learned something really cool today. I had no idea why there was judgment brought on them, but it has to do with slavery. And it's a misuse of slavery. Check this out. Jeremiah 34. In Jeremiah 34, and this is Jeremiah talking to the prophet King Zedekiah. Verse 6, Then Jeremiah the prophet spoke all these words to Zedekiah, king of Judah, in Jerusalem, when the army of the king of Babylon was fighting against Jerusalem and against all the cities of Judah that were left, Lachish and Azekah, for these were the only fortified cities of Judah that remained. The word that came to Jeremiah from the Lord, after King Zedekiah had made a covenant with all the people in Jerusalem to make a proclamation of liberty to them, that everyone should set free his Hebrew slaves, male and female, so that no one should enslave a Jew, his brother. And they obeyed. All the officials and all the people who had entered into the covenant, that everyone would set free his slave, male or female, so that they would not be enslaved again. They obeyed and set them free. But afterward, they turned around and took back the male and female slaves they had set free and brought them into subjection as slaves. The word of the Lord came to Jeremiah from the Lord. Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, I myself made a covenant with your fathers when I brought them out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery, saying, At the end of 7 years, each of you must set free the fellow Hebrew who has been sold to you and has served you 6 years. You must set him free from your service. But your fathers did not listen to me or incline their ears to me. You recently repented and did what was right in my eyes by proclaiming liberty, each to his neighbor, and you made a covenant before me in the house that is called by my name. But then you turned around and profaned my name, when each of you took back his male and female slaves whom you had set free according to their desire, and you brought them into subjection to be your slaves. Therefore, so here it's so good, so far so good. He said, I told you to set your slaves free, that there would be no Jewish slave. You did it, you repented, but then now you went back on it and you brought them back into slavery. Therefore, thus says the Lord, you have not obeyed me by proclaiming liberty. Everyone to his brother and to his neighbor, behold, I proclaim to you liberty to the sword, to pestilence, and to famine, declares the Lord. I will make you a horror to all the kingdoms of the earth, and the men who transgressed my covenant and did not keep the terms of the covenant that they made before me, I will make them like the calf that they cut in two and passed between its parts. The officials of Judah, the officials of Jerusalem, the eunuchs, the priests, and all the people of the land who passed between the parts of the calf, and I will give them into the hand of their enemies, and into the hand of those who seek their lives. Their dead bodies shall be food for the birds of the air and of the beasts of the earth. And Zedekiah, king of Judah, and his officials, I will give into the hand of their enemies, and into the hand of those who seek their lives, into the hand of the army of the king of Babylon, which has withdrawn from you. Behold, I will command, declares the Lord, and will bring them back to the city, and they will fight against it and take it and burn it with fire. I will make the cities of Judah a desolation without inhabitant. All because they decided to bring slavery back. Isn't that crazy? I had no clue. I was like, wow. Like I had no idea. Even though I've read it like a million times, I never picked up on it. I guess because we're just studying it. Now, in the New Testament, by the time we get to the New Testament, anyone who becomes a believer in Jesus becomes free. Period. Now, there was slavery in that time. And there's actually a slave. There's a book called Philemon that Paul wrote, and it's about a slave who had gotten saved, and he was gone on this missionary journey. He had run away from his master, and Paul said, look, you're saved now. You need to go back to your master. And he knew who his master was. His name was Onesimus. However, he was free. Like he was at liberty.
Yeah.
But he was a believer in Jesus. And so Paul told him, go back and honor the commitment that you made. You know, and then he sent the letter to Philemon, sent the letter to Onesimus to tell him, I'm sending your slave back to you, but you know that he is free. You know, it's really cool. So if you ever want to read about a slave that becomes saved, who is free, but then he goes back to his master to honor his commitment because of him being a believer and being honest before God, he goes back. It's a crazy story.
Yes.
Isn't
I've
that
never
nuts?
heard that.
It
Yeah.
seems like a wild choice to me.
Yeah, I might read it just so you can hear the story. All right, so in Romans chapter 8, verse 8, those who are in the flesh cannot please God. You, however, are not in the flesh, but in the Spirit. If, in fact, the Spirit of God dwells in you, anyone who does not have the Spirit of Christ does not belong to him. But if Christ is in you, although the body is dead because of sin, the Spirit is life because of righteousness. If the Spirit of him who raised Jesus from the dead dwells in you, he who raised Christ Jesus from the dead will also give life to your mortal bodies through his Spirit who dwells in you. So then, brothers, we are debtors not to the flesh, to live according to the flesh. For if you live according to the flesh, you will die. But if by the Spirit you put to death the deeds of the body, you will live. For all who are led by the Spirit of God are sons of God. For you did not receive the spirit of slavery to fall back into fear, but you have received the Spirit of adoption as sons, by whom we cry, Abba, Father. Abba, Father is like saying, Dada, in English. It's the loving way of saying Papa. When we talk to God, sometimes, we have these formal prayers. Oh, Lord God, when we call upon you and I pray, right? You could literally be like, Daddy. That intimate word that you would have for a father. It's like you,
Daddy?
Daddy. But basically, if you, I heard a pastor talk about whenever he was in Israel, and he didn't really know what Abba meant, other than they were just a really bad disco band from the 70s.
Gross.
So anyway, he saw a little girl running through the streets in Jerusalem after her father holding her hands up saying, Abba, Abba. And that's what he's saying. He's like, we don't have a spirit of slavery, but we have a spirit of liberty that was given as adoption as sons to God. If we call on him, we have that. And we can call on him like that close father, So maybe that's the answer, guys. We need to wrap this one up. This is a long episode. I would say, and I'm so glad that you guys came. I really am. But
We solved racism.
yes, everybody, at the end of this episode, I want you to find the closest black man and just hug him out of the blue. I promise you it will go well. No, obviously that's not true. But
There's a weird way in which I envision that going well more often than not.
probably,
I don't know
yeah.
that that's true, but
Yeah, I mean, I know.
it feels like that could go well a weird amount of times.
Yeah.
Frankly.
I think inside my heart, I don't even want to have those terrible inclinations that just rise out of my own control. I don't know if that'll ever change. I hope it does.
I hate to bring this up, but they've done studies on infants will self-select for color, like people that are too young to have, and it's because I don't know, what is it, like the unknown or something? Yeah. So there is a portion.
So you're saying I'm an infant? I'm just kidding.
You have the emotional intelligence of an infant. No, I'm just saying. But there is a portion of human nature that we have to be at war with in order to deal with this.
It's natural. Yeah.
It's not
so simple. It's I guess nobody was really suggesting it was simple, but it's even more complex than I think people were understanding, because you have to. It is an impulse in yourself that you will have to be at war with, probably for the entirety of your life.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think you're a step ahead of the game simply because you know that you feel that way and there's something wrong
I think,
that causes you to feel that way. So just the fact that you've noticed it and you are trying to change.
Mm-hmm.
You're asking how.
Yeah, I asked the Lord to help. Like I want to be able to look at them. I want to be able to look at you the same way God looks at you. That's what I want. And that's true for any human being, you know?
The atheist approves.
Oh, wow.
That's what this is all about, right?
That's what it's, yeah. That's what this show is all about. Anyway, so I was armed with a ton of black jokes. No, I'm just kidding. Is there such a thing as a white joke? Do you guys ever tell white jokes?
He's on the spot.
So I'm gonna put you on the spot. I gotta ask you this.
Yeah.
The big one, that we have
I want to hear a good one. Yes, please.
is white people, when they get wet, they smell like wet dogs.
It's true, man. I mean, it's funny because it's true.
Or no, we got one we do at work. You ever watch that show? I think it's on True TV. It shows like guys taking dirt bikes down this 2-mile dang hill and jumping off, doing crazy stuff like that. We sit and we watch it and it's like, oh yeah, that's that white boy stuff. Like, yeah, I bet you that was a white boy. And even the white guys at work do it. So it's just kind of
I've seen versions of that one a lot.
Yeah.
Like that's some shit only a white guy would do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or the other one I've seen on different things is like the how adult white women are not afraid of anything.
Yes.
That one's pretty funny. Like it'll be like a bear and like some Karen is like shooing it out of her yard. Yeah, like white women are not afraid of shit.
Yeah. Do you know what? The funniest white joke that I think I've ever heard was Chris Rock. When he was talking about the difference between white people and black people,
Yes.
and he
Pryor
said,
was good for that line too.
yeah, he said, if you hear about somebody kicking a grandma down the stairs and taking her purse, that's totally a black guy. But if you hear about somebody cutting off somebody's toes and playing pool with it,
Yes.
that's a white guy. Yeah. Anyway, well, thank you, AJ, and thank you,
Anytime,
Joan, for coming and
anytime.
being honest. Yeah, I hope maybe I can have you back. We're going to be doing some other special episodes, not necessarily, and who knows? I mean, maybe we can, if we learn some more things. We didn't get into critical race theory. I wanted to talk about that, but that's like, dude, we could talk 2 to 8 hours about critical race theory.
Yeah. Every time that one comes up at work, that's a whole week-long argument we have.
I don't think people know what it is.
They don't. I know the guys that I talk to about it, they don't really
They don't
understand
know what it
it.
is. No, they just think it's like making white people feel like shit.
Yeah, that's exactly what my buddy at work thinks. It's like, oh, it's just training everybody to hate white people and letting everybody know that white people are just bad.
But it's no different than what the war on drugs was. So, the war on drugs taught everybody to hate and be afraid of black people because they were super predators. So
precisely our argument is that is exactly not what critical race theory is about.
Right. Critical. Yeah, it's not. It is. But educating children, I think that I am probably less of a racist because of what I learned in school. When I was coming up, we weren't allowed to be disrespectful to any race, and where I came up at, so. Of course, I think we only had 2 black people, maybe 4 black people in the whole school. But I was friends with them, and I played sports with them, and I was friends with them. I was on the bus with them. Like I had no issues whatsoever.
Well, that's weird because I went to the same school you did, and in my day there was a lot.
Yeah.
Because
you just gotta get lucky. Really, like it's a time and place thing. And
lucky that they're there or that they're not.
No, lucky.
I was just kidding. Andy, I was putting you on the spot, bro.
I was just saying, it's like one of those things. Like he was at the same place at a different time, surrounded by completely different people.
Exactly.
So it's just an accident of luck.
Yeah.
That whether you're, if the racist had kids at the same time as your parents,
Yeah.
you're gonna have some more shit to deal with
Right.
than if the people that accidentally had kids at the same time as your parents just don't happen to be as racist. It's gonna be a little easier
Right.
Well, there
for
was
learning. I mean,
it was a lot of kids from Brickton.
Yeah.
I think is what that neighborhood across from. Yeah.
Yeah,
There was
there
a
might have
lot that
been,
were
maybe
some-
there were like 10 or 12.
Some of them were
though.
older than me. Some of them were about my age, but they were actually the ones. There were two in particular, a girl and a guy that lived out there that were my protectors on the bus. And I'm not talking about from other black people. I'm just saying, back in the day when you
Yeah.
when you first start middle school, you know what a pink belly is?
Yes.
Okay, that was the big thing.
Yeah, I
that
got
they
a pink
did.
belly and a swirly in the same day.
Oh yeah, it was a big thing on the
Swirly.
buses. Oh, you're brand new to this school, and they had us all scared to death of that. But I had people that protected me from
Yeah, so a pink
Other
belly is when they
people-
throw you on the ground, hold you down, pull
Yeah.
your shirt up, and then smack your belly a
smack
million
it till
times.
it's pink.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And a swirly, you know what a swirly is? It's whenever
yeah,
you
they put your head in a toilet and
Toilet,
flush it.
yeah.
No, a swirly is it's like the ultimate indignity. I think.
that's where the poo goes. Yeah.
I never had that done. Never had any of it done.
Well,
But they-
thankfully, I've never had a swirly.
Yeah. Well, anyway. Well, thanks again. Thanks AJ, thanks Joan, Andy. And you guys just check us out next time on the Burrows of Berea.
Hee haw. I'll put Billy in.
That's a Billy mode, yeah. All right.
Awesome.
Andy, what are the chances you have a cough drop?
Okay.
What are the chances you have a cough drop here? Any?
0. Water.
Yeah.
I got water.
Okay. Heroin?
Just a little. Not really enough to go around.
So we're rolling?
Yes, we are
Okay.
rolling.